Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Ready to Escape High Cost and Flexible Fiber Systems, sponsored by Power Intel and Comtrend. Our presenters today are Ab Quinlivan, Vice President of Business Development at Fonex, and AJ Sicasio, Senior Director of Channel Sales at Comtrend. I'm Michelle Coleman, Director of Associate Engagement here at NTCA. And we believe that information about products and services should be made available to members so they can make informed decisions for themselves and their companies. As such, NTCA does not endorse, recommend, or make any representations with respect to the products or services being offered, sold, or described. If you have questions, please use the Q&A box to submit them. Questions will be addressed immediately following the presentation. And at this point, I will turn it over to AJ and Ab.
Okay. So what we're going to talk a little bit today is about a disruptive fiber technology. Have obviously two of Comtrend's very important partners here, Power Intel from distribution and Fonex with Ab. And so I'll get a little into that. Obviously, Power Intel, very important distributor to Comtrend. I've been with Comtrend for about 12 years. They've been, our top distributor almost that entire time. And as many of you probably know, they're located in Tennessee. You can get all Comtrend product from them, as well as other vendors that help complete the solutions. Comtrend has been around for 30 years. We started in the DSL world. We are still in the DSL world, although we have made that transition to fiber. The one thing I do want to mention is as everyone else exits DSL, so Smart RG, Zyzel, BEC completely end of life their product. If you are scrambling to find that kind of equipment, come to us. We like to joke that we're going to be the US robotics of DSL and be the last man standing on that hardware. But about 5 or 6 years ago, actually more than that, probably about 7 years ago, we started making the transition towards this fiber world. First with routers that can go behind anything. So behind a fiber ONT, a cable modem, a fixed wireless device, to now where we are, where the last year and a half, we've developed an XGS-PON product and found great partners to work with to be able to offer that type of equipment. Like I referenced, I've been here at Comtrend for about 12 years. I've been in the industry since 1998, originally at a distributor, Ingram Micro, and then after that, 4 other hardware manufacturers. But this has been my longest tenure here at Comtrend. I work with our channel partners as well as all of our customers. And on my team, we have 5 salespeople that cover the United States. But you can always come to me if you don't know who your Comtrend person is. And like I mentioned, I hope to meet some of you in person in Boston. And I'll turn it over to Ab to tell everyone a little bit about himself.
Great. Thanks, AJ. My name is Ab Quinlivan, VP of Business Development for Fonex. Just a little history about Fonex. Fonex has been in business for 30 plus years, based out of Montreal, Canada, Europe, and now the United States. Very conservative engineering company focused on integration of products. And so as we talk to you about the Tibit product today, along with our partner in the ONT world with Comtrend, understand that all the products that complete that ecosystem, that underlying ecosystem, have been approved and integrated by Fonex as we move through the presentation. About me, I've been in the business for 24 years, and every year, and that's been in telecom. I started with a DSL startup company, and we actually distributed through Power and Telephone Supply. So I've known the Pentecost family, Jim Drain, and all the crazy retired Power and Tel people from the past, like Tommy Nelson and Eddie Swing, who you still see kicking around today. But it's been a great partnership, and I was introduced to Comtrend back then in those DSL days. So really looking forward to this new world of standards-based XGS-PON, just like we exited the proprietary DSL days into standards-based ADSL. We are now exiting the world of proprietary purpose-built products from legacy vendors to an open standard where you can pick and choose your own best in breed partners and not just be held hostage by the best in breed technology of any one given company. So go ahead, AJ. Thank you.
Right. So, again, on that right side is what we used to do, only gateways. And now on the left side, we're also doing the XGS PON ONTs. Comtrend has always been in that purple square, but it used to just be the gateways. So, and the access, again, being like DSL, let's say, or if not DSL, some gateway behind maybe your cable plant or your fixed wireless plant, or your fiber plant with one of those proprietary vendors. We are very excited to have added a partner product, Tibit, that now brings us into this world. And they do what they do best, which is that green square, and north of that, with partners like Fonex. And now I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Ab to tell you a little bit about the technology.
Great. So what is Tibit? Tibit has actually been in business for 7 years now, shipping product and actively deployed networks for 5 years. So Tibit, at its core, is a group of engineers that have been working together for about 20 plus years. The Tibit OLT on an SFP plus form factor that you see in the little box there represents their 14th generation of ASIC that they have designed from the ground up. They did work with, they put together companies that have sold their product to Broadcom. So what we all know is the generally accepted chipset for some chipsets, one of the chipsets for ONTs, and also the OLTs, GPON and such. They actually invented that and sold it to Broadcom. So now they were put together. They were funded several, like I said, 7-8 years ago by Juniper, Ciena, Intel, LGI, who LGI we all know to be the largest cable operator in the world. They put together their initial funding and brought Tibit to life. Since then, Ciena has taken over as they've actually purchased their investment because it was doing so well in some of these large companies you see today. I mean, we just throw the large names up there, but rest assured that the grassroots effort that finally got them accepted by these large companies started certainly in the tier 3 space with our MSO, our smaller regional MSO and ILEC partners. So what it is a totally standards-based XGS PON OLT on a stick. Totally standards-based. This can be placed, as you'll see here in a moment, in any 10 gig port, any standard-based non-keyed, right? A lot of people are proud of their OLTs or their 10 gig ports, and they key the SFP or don't allow other SFPs to go in there. But they can be placed in anything, and that is from $150 little router all the way up to your biggest Cisco router or Arista switch. So we can move on.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, you're all right. So basically, we put this right alongside any existing PON OLT chassis from the legacy vendors. We don't need to name them, but I've actually worked for 3 of them. So whether it's Calix, Adtran, or back in the day with DZS, they're all based on an architecture that is purpose-built and closed for a reason. It's a fundamental part of their business model. They need to sell you all ends of this to be in business and to continue to thrive. However, what the funding partners of Tibit imagined was a world much like the ADSL world evolved, where you can take ONTs, this Tibit OLT, and put it in any router or switch that's standards-based 10 gig. And this is also, by the way, their mantra moving forward. So as 25 gig and 50 gig, you're not going to see all of a sudden chassis, purpose-built chassis that you have to buy from one vendor. You're going to see a SFP form factor that is appropriate for the 25 gig, 50 gig, 100 gig, and beyond delivery method. So as you can imagine, this becomes very scalable. And because it's based on open standards that doesn't take proprietary software and such to make it tick, significantly lower CapEx, and the most important thing is significantly lower OpEx, because that's really what gets you as you grow a network and move it into the future. Could move to the next slide. You can imagine how it does become very disruptive, moving from a closed proprietary system to an open system. We all felt this pain if you were with one of the legacy vendors over the pandemic, the COVID years, where we were seeing lead times on ONTs upwards of 12 months and beyond, some of these, right? And because the legacy vendors knew they had a captive audience, yeah, guess what? Prices might have got a little bit higher too. And certainly the fees to get the individual per month fees to keep these ONTs operating, that's become a very big thing too. When we talk about open networks, we're not able to leverage those same fees. And we don't. So you're not going to see when AJ and I talk about an open architecture built on Tibit, it's not one that has monthly reoccurring fees for ONTs, just to keep them running and not become a brick. So it's a very, again, like I said, disrupted, open architected system. We can move on.
Yeah, and one thing I wanted to add is in talking to distribution partners who were coming to us back when they needed PON units during the middle of pandemic and supply chain issues, and were telling us about how upset their customers were because a lack of a $40 device was preventing their installs because of that long lead time that Ab was talking about. So, right. That's definitely the advantage of this flexibility.
Good point. Because that last point there limited to a single vendor's offering. Again, as I mentioned before in the introduction, it's no longer are you taking advantage of what one company is engineering. You're taking advantage of what the world ecosystem of XGS-PON and beyond is engineering, not just a purple or a blue offering, right? So imagine, the old saying, two heads are better than one, right? Multiplied by many, many times. Okay, we move forward. This is just to show you the kind of density we're talking. We're literally talking 10 gig ports in an OLT. This happens to be an Arista switch that we have here that it's a pretty high powered switch, but people deploy this way. 48 ports can be deployed with 60% less space, but more importantly, as energy costs become more and more and more, that cost to keep your central office and all the backup generators and everything, that's a real bill at the end of every month. And if you could save 40% on your access, on the access piece of your market in that same central office, why wouldn't you take a look? Not to mention that as we're talking about standards-based XGS-PON, of course, you can do 1x2, 1x16, 32, 64, up to 128-way splits. And because we're talking about 10 gig by 10 gig, we have so much more bandwidth, high efficiency, low latency bandwidth available on that 1010 versus 2.4, 1.2 gigs, that you really can start taking advantage if you want to, with higher split ratios, all based on standards-based budget, link budgets that you would be used to designing any GPON network with. So nothing fancy or proprietary about it. Go ahead, sorry, AJ. And so what does that get you? That moves you from the traditional PON access, purpose-built cards or purpose-built 1RUs that just are focused on GPON or XGS-PON or a little bit of both, right? Or point-to-point Ethernet. And it moves you into a world where you can leverage any switch or router, again, as long as it doesn't have the keyed optics, right? There's some people, again, very, very proud of those SFP ports. But this represents about 95% of the switching and routing market are now moved to a situation where you can deploy third-party optic. And the Tibit microplug, in this sense, just becomes a third-party optic that can be deployed in any given switch, and it gives you plenty of flexibility. So in the same switch, whether it's a white box switch from EdgeCore, Eufy Space, or an Arista or Ciena, or a Cisco switch, you can deploy point-to-point lasers or microplugs out of there, or the Tibit microplug to become an OLT. So to leverage an existing asset something you've already paid for and capitalized and operationalized, you can just slap this OLT in. Could be one. It only could be one, and you could deploy 16, 32, 64, or 128 customers on that existing switch. Next slide. So what does that look like? I mean, it's easy, to say, oh yeah, we can all do this, but I mean, this is what's happening all over rural markets today, as well as, major metros with those larger players that you saw earlier. We're not asking you to switch religions, so to speak. We're just saying, hey, give us a shot. Take a look at what we've got here. You can run it alongside of any existing network you have in an existing port, as I said before. So this could be part of a migration from PON, standards-based GPON, to XGS PON, or it could be an augment to an XGS PON network that you started, just because you understand, and certainly your board of directors and the folks looking forward into the technology space understand that standards-based third-party optics, coherent optics for switching and routing. So talking Sienna Sienna lasers can go into Cisco routers now for 100 gig and 400 gig, transport shots. So this is the same mentality, but now taking this back down to the access piece. So it's a beautiful either augment or cap and grow migration strategy for your company. Next. As I said before, this can coexist along an existing GPON or along an existing XGS PON market by simply taking advantage of what we knew in the RF video days as a EDFA or EDFA. We take that same mindset, that same technology, we call it a coexistence module, and we allow you to take your legacy PON vendor that you've been deploying for the last 8 years, 9 years for GPON, and we allow you on that very same PON to, but on a different wavelength, to insert XGS PON and go out over the same PON. And that's either, that might be very helpful in a multi-use, MDU type environment, or in just some sort of a gradual migration from PON to XGS PON, from the 2.4 to the 10 gig by 10 gig. So again, it fits very well into a PON to XGS PON migration with legacy companies, legacy technology. Go ahead. The other piece of this that can't be overlooked, because again, some people are very proud of their software and charge a lot of money for it. We're able to, again, because we're using industry standards, every unit that you buy, if you buy 1 unit or you buy 250 OLT, Tibit OLTs, you get a PON management system that goes with it that has an open API that can be integrated into any larger order OSS operating system that you may have, including the bigger ones out there, like the innovative systems and the NAIC. I always say that acronym wrong. NAIC, I think. And I apologize for anybody who has that and I'm mispronouncing it. But because it's an open API, you can easily snap that in for integration to existing billing systems and provisioning systems. So it becomes a very powerful open situation. There are also other databases that are free that you can layer on this. So if you want to set alarms, and we help you do this, by the way, in conjunction with Comtrend, there are very powerful databases that allow you to put up meaningful statistics, to track meaningful statistics and anything you might want on customer side, whether it's customers bumping into bandwidth or downtime or any thresholds that you want to set. And that's all stuff that as we move forward we can discuss with you. But because it's on a standards-based Linux operating system with Linux servers, it becomes very easy to deploy and it's very small. Takes a very small virtual machine footprint on any existing Linux box that you can spin up additional virtual machines, or if you want to dedicate one, you certainly can. But on the fact that it can support any ONT with open OMCI makes myself and AJ be on alert at all times, because this is open, right? Any ONT can go on the XGS ONT as long as it's not been coded with proprietary, so legacy vendors let me pause for a second. I should say that all ONTs, there's about 5 different chipsets that are sold worldwide, and all ONTs are born standards-based and able to interop across every platform. The legacy vendors take those ONTs, they put special code on them to lock out the other vendors so that you have to buy their unit. This is on the contrary, this is totally different. So if myself and AJ aren't doing our job with Comtrend and Fonex integration, you can replace us, right? Or if we have a long lead time that's 1 week past when you want to deploy, you can buy it from buy another ONT from somebody else. So it really makes us do our job and understand what your network needs, and makes us work hand in hand with you and your team. Next.
On service and availability and performance, right?
That's right. That's right. So what are you paying to deliver broadband? Obviously, we're not going to get into specifics here, but we'd be happy to talk you through that. We have some pretty cool models, price modeling that allow us to compare ourselves to your legacy vendors that you may have already deployed or are thinking about deploying. And if, for example, it's again, we can't really throw a dollar amount, but it is significantly less. I'll just put it that way. And that's just on the CapEx. That's the easy part. That's the one time I buy it and I'm up and running and I go. But as we move into the next slide, when you start talking about OpEx, it is a huge differentiator. I can say that, again, there is no price per ONT to keep that ONT up and running in your network. We do not monetize your end users, the service provider's customers. So we're not trying to sell anything to the end user, right? We're just trying to make sure the service provider has a solid and dependable network that they can bring down any statistics that they choose to do on a free, right, on a non-pay basis, and with standards-based products that are accepted worldwide. So we can move to the next slide. So as we look at some cases, I mean, what is this scale? What does this look like? So you can see we can do anywhere from a 2-port OL switch, or I'll call that appliance. That's the self-managed unit you see where the Tivit plugs are being put into. That can be 24 ports, that can be 2 ports, that can be 48 ports. It really depends on what the result is that you're looking for. So in the case of the split ratios needed for a condo scenario like this, we put in a 20-port box, we threw a couple OLTs. That appliance or that switch actually has the compute power on it. So we're able to locate the PON manager right on that, go to a PON demarc, and then put a gateway behind it for data, IPTV, and private Wi-Fi. The fact that this is standards-based and the integration has been done and taken care of between your Comtrend and Fonex teammates, it allows us to spend far less time getting into configuring it and rack mounting it. I mean, all that stuff. So it's a very compelling way to go. And you could do this in one part of your network or at one MDU, and you never have to deploy another one. Now we hope that's not the case. Obviously, we hope you deploy many more, but you can use this for one specific location. Decide you like it or not, whether to continue or not continue with it. It's not, again, like I said, making a life decision or a 10-year decision. It's really making a decision what's best for the next part of your network, or to layer on an existing network. Okay. So as we look at this partnership between Comtrend and Fonex, everything that we're talking about, we have already tested, labbed up, and are deploying today. So this is not smoke and mirrors or something that we're hoping to get moving out there. This already has so much momentum behind it. Anytime you see a cable OS announcement like at Charter or AT&T moving in for Ethernet services into a new area of their network, a new regional area, it's behind this Tivit. It's being powered by Tivit, Sienna and Tivit on this side of it. So as you look at Fonex and Comtrend as pretty, I mean, you don't know Fonex as much as you know Comtrend, but as I said, very conservative, engineering focused company partnering with a company like Comtrend, who's been in the business for 30 plus years, developing all sorts of different products for our access network. Of course, we're going to offer something that we can stand behind and support, and that is not going to get us run out. And so for the last 2 years, we've been deploying these type of networks together, from the OLT to the ONU, with the end-to-end support. So there's no finger pointing, right? If we bring a solution to you, that ecosystem is guaranteed and supported by Fonex and Comtrend. So we can move on. What does that look like? As you might say, okay, you've got all, oh, okay, I know it's white box. I know it's an open architecture. I might be a little bit scared about that because of all the working parts involved. Well, as I said before, we supply, or can supply, if you want us to, between ourselves and Comtrend, the entire ecosystem. We demonstrate this in some of the demo kits that we ship initially. We call them, we're very creative, we call them Kit 1 and Kit 2. You can start with 2 ONTs and a smaller UCPE, where that's the appliance where we put the SFPs, the Tibit SFP plugs, or a slightly larger one where you can get started. And we supply everything. The software is preloaded. It comes with the plugs, the ONTs, the patch cables, and software, everything you might need to get started on a first office application, or just to even lab up. Alternatively, again, because this is an open system, we can put it in an existing switch that you might have in your lab, because you just want to test in the software, because you probably have a server running there too. We can help you load that very small client on an existing or a new virtual machine to power up your trial or your first office application. And it's a very easy way to get started. And again, if we do our job, hopefully you'll deploy more with us. If we don't, you can stop there and say, oh, that was nice, but yeah, thanks, no thanks. But we've experienced far much more of the first scenario, which is they're moving on to find new and interesting greenfield deployments with this Tibit solution. Okay, I'll hand it off to AJ.
Thank you. And so, yeah, and then once you've looked at that kit and, you're ready to start, acquiring the hardware, it works for you, then we work with partner like power and telephone. And this is the normal equipment, like the Comtrend equipment, and that's where you normally pick it up. So we will help make that happen. These are our 2 ONTs. One interesting thing is what was on, I think, 2 slides back, it mentioned how, Comtrend sells to, we've sold to like 900 customers over time, and we have about 400 or so every quarter that are purchasing some type of equipment from us. I mean, I would, I don't think it's a risk to say that probably every single telco DSL, historic DSL telephone company has either used Comtrend at one time, is using Comtrend today, or has Comtrend units sitting in their lab right now, free samples, let's say. And that's really how we operate, like on our gateways. That sample kit is handled a little bit differently, but the our goal is to get the units in front of you so that you can test them, try them, and then look to move forward. Our marketing team, who helped get us into this webinar, their initial newsletter that went out kind of introducing this technology and that Comtrend had entered this space about, I don't know, say a year and a half ago. We got a number of responses from that, but one of the very first companies that responded to us was a fairly sizable service provider in Alaska, tier 3, but nice size tier 3. And since that time, they've already purchased 2,000 of our ONTs using this Tibit technology, our XGS PON ONTs, and those are out in the market today. These are our 2 that we have today. So on the left, 2.5 gig with voice, on the right, 10 gig. We also have a roadmap, which this kind of refers to here, excuse me, of integrated Wi-Fi, outdoor weather hardened coming as well, and some other different form factors that we can, talk about as we find out a little bit more about your specific needs. So that's the ONT side of it. The gateways, we have been specialists in routing Wi-Fi gateways for years now. The first Ethernet only gateways we had were the Wi-Fi 4, then the 5, then now we're on 6. We have a Wi-Fi 6E gateway that we've just released, so we do have sample units of those. So if anyone's interested in the Wi-Fi 6E, there's a QR code at the end of this that you can hit. You can email me. It's just first name dot last name at comtrend.com, or give me a call, and I'll give you my phone number at the end here. Home networking, we do that a number of different ways. And so this is extending broadband throughout the home. So over power line, over coax, or through Wi-Fi extenders. And the Wi-Fi extenders done with, additional partners that we work with, whether it's Plume, that's how you want to do your Wi-Fi mesh. Or if you want to use the Comtrend Wi-Fi mesh solution, we have a very good, no cost as far as licensing Wi-Fi mesh solution called Wi-Fi Extend. And then we have a number of consumer products as well. These are our Wi-Fi 6 units. And like I mentioned, we just released a Wi-Fi 6E. All 4 of these units, we do believe in working with best of breed partners. So that's why you see a few of these names on the side here. All 4 of these units can use our own home built solution, which is the Wi-Fi Extend for mesh. We have Plume for Wi-Fi mesh. So they build a pretty slick solution, which maybe many of you are familiar with. We can put that OpenSync software on our units. So if you are already in a Plume environment, you can use the Comtrend units. Or if you decide to enter that environment, you can use the Comtrend units with Plume. And then Bark, which is not only parental control, but also artificial intelligence. Very solid product for something that a service provider like yourself can offer to your customer base. Make a little bit more money, so increase your ASP, but more importantly, offer parents a solution to protecting their kids online, which many of them are, many parents are, challenged with today, worried about today. This is a great solution that they can use to protect their families, protect their kids. One other thing on Plume that I did want to mention, unlike if you've ever seen like the Plume pods that plug into the wall, I know there's companies like Kaon manufacture those, Evo Digital manufactures those. Those types of Plume devices, if you as a service provider ever decided to exit Plume, or you were going to take a single customer off of Plume because maybe they're not paying for that, they don't want that service anymore, you have to do a truck roll to pull that equipment out. All those Plume pods become paperweights because they can only operate on the Plume network. Comtrend units, very easy. You put the Comtrend out today, you decide you want to go Plume, flash a firmware code out to those units. They're now Plume devices. You decide you want to exit or take specific customers off. You can actually remove that code and put on a GA code or a Comtrend custom code without having to roll a truck. And that's actually, kind of what I was talking about here. So these are the 4 Plume certified units, a VDSL, a Ethernet only router, that's 6301. On the right, the PBL and the PRT 6302 are both 2.5 gig WAN, but the PBL 6201, that's a VDSL bonded. But one of the other advantages that we really learned from during the supply chain was we have this opportunity here where we have 2 SKUs that are essentially the same thing. Other than the fact that, let's say the one on the left, that 3071 has a VDSL chipset in it, it's the same as the PRT 6301 to the right of it. And that PBL 6201, which is bonded, it's the same as that 6302 to the right of it. So if ever there was a scenario, if you were buying the Ethernet routers from us and there was a port strike or a ship sank or another pandemic or something like that happened, and let's say our shipment of 6301s was held up, we could get you the VR 3071. You ignore the VDSL part of it. We'll work with you with our partner Power Intel on pricing to make sure you're not seeing a more expensive price. If you're only using it because you can't get, the Ethernet only one, we give you that 3071 you use as an Ethernet router, and Bob's your uncle. So that's really it. The key takeaways from this: fast, easy to deploy, like Ab mentioned, in 4 hours. And we've seen that on those sample kits that we've sent out. We've seen as quick as 2 hours, and maybe even quicker, that Ab can talk about. CapEx, OpEx savings, and customers that are using this today, from some of the largest ones to small, condo complexes, tier 3. We're even talking to some, very tiny service providers today, and building service providers, about offering this type of solution. Ab, I'll actually, if there's anything you want to kick in on this slide, why don't you go ahead on the key takeaways?
Yeah, no, I think that's it. The key takeaway is here, again, it's a system that you can use now and in the future for sure. And it's a platform that's going to be built in this way for the foreseeable future. So you don't have to worry about changing your backplane out, buying a new chassis, buying a new 1R unit. This is based on industry standard optical footprints that will be evolving, that will all be evolving, not just with a given vendor, but with the entire networking community. So if you haven't taken a look at it already, it's actually a very good time to take a look and see how this might be able to fit into your network, and actually see some of the money, kind of make us put our money where our mouth is on some of the CapEx and OpEx opportunities as you see greenfield or brownfield type deployment scenarios. But yeah, that's really it for me. Thank you.
Yeah, and so if you wanted to schedule a meeting, you wanted some more information, there's that QR code there. My email address is there. My phone number is I'll probably put it in the chat too, but it's 949-500-9455. So that's again 949-500-9455. And I think that's really what we wanted to talk about. I know I can see there's already one question here. Michelle, I didn't know if you wanted to prompt, or if you have some other questions in front of you.
Yeah, go ahead and take that one.
Okay.
Yeah, so this one,
let me go.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say one thing first on this, and then I'll turn it over to you, because I don't know how your part of the solution handles this. But from a gateway vendor, Comtrend, we have an ACS solution, software solution that is actually, you can't even separate for the FCC submission. So we have an FCC module. We have where you can just get the speed and latency data, as well as a submission module, where you can submit that as the FCC needs to receive it. So on our side, from the gateway, not a problem at all. And it's standards based. So it can work with other vendors' hardware as well, including Comtrend hardware. So, if you needed to look at an ACS, then we have that. But as far as on Ab, on your software, maybe if you want to address this, like I think you were about to.
It would be something that we would actually pull. I'm asking for it, and we'll provide you a more formal explanation. But yeah, it is something that we work in conjunction with our endpoint providers. So for example, TR069, right? It's not anything that is specific to Tibit. It really needs to be handled on the access, or the endpoint provider side. So yeah, we absolutely integrate into those scenarios and are fully compliant with that, as you might imagine, in the high profile deployments that Tibit has today.
And that Comtrend ACS is a very inexpensive solution. And again, it's standard based. So your TR69, TR143, 181. So it can be split off of our ACS if you wanted to manage your hardware with your own home built solution and just use this for the speed submissions, not a problem. Or you could look at the whole entire solution.
Great.
Okay.
Great example how we can work that together. Go ahead. Sorry, Michelle.
Great. No, that's fine. If you have questions, we'll open it up for questions now. Please type your questions in the Q&A box, and we will get to those as they come in. And it looks like we have another one. Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's just a follow-up from the first question. Okay, is it okay if we place this presentation on our website?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so for those of you tuning in, if you want to share with others, this webinar will be posted on the NTCA website in a couple days. If you go to ntca.org and click on the events tab and go to webinars and archived webinars, and you'll see the presentation there. Now, is this management software easy to learn?
Yes, as far from the OLT side, the Pawn Manager, this is a very intuitive software. Again, it's very skinny VM, virtual machine that you need to spin up, and you can put this in a small server, or you can spin up a 16-core server if you want to keep tons of PM data, historical data. If you want to log it for 3 years, and obviously you need to spin up the proper memory, or at least point that at that larger server that would store that data. But yes, it's very very intuitive, and not much time is needed to learn.
And it's easy to deploy as well.
Exactly. We again, because we have so many models where we can deploy the Pawn Manager on the actual switch, if the switch has compute power that the OLT, that the Tibit stick is going to live in, or you can deploy that software in the cloud, whether that's your cloud or the Amazon cloud. It could be deployed anywhere. Obviously, you want to deploy it as close to the actual access network as you can eventually, but certainly we do our lab test with an Amazon cloud instance that sits in Seattle and interfaces with our lab in Montreal. So over that distance, there might be a slight pause, but it's minuscule, milliseconds. So yes.
And what's the ongoing maintenance?
So the ongoing maintenance, that's great. It's pretty standard. It's pretty standards based. The hardware, again, no maintenance for the ONTs, right? That's given in the cost. It's a standard 5% of the ongoing, and that's up to 250 OLTs. So the most that you can pay for the maintenance on the OLT is about, I think it tops out at about $8,000 at 250 plus OLTs, which is, if you multiply 250 times 32, yeah, I mean, all right. I mean, that's well over 25,000 users, and the most you're going to pay is in between $5,000 and $8,000. So it's pretty impressive. As I hear, some of the competitors out there that we go against, I mean, 1,000 access line network for an IOC they'll pay upwards of $25,000 to $28,000 a year for the same network, and for only 1,000 subscribers. So.
Mm-hmm. And how many IT resources are needed?
Really none, because us as the integrator, if you buy the ecosystem from us, if it's something you want us to do from soup to nuts, we load the software on the switch or router that you choose to use and ship it to you preloaded. And then we take you through the training. So ideally, you'd want to have one person that's got some good awareness of Linux-based networking or virtual machine networking, which in this day and age, I think is not everyone, but it speaks to most service providers out there that have at least one of those resources, and we would just interface with that resource for ongoing issues.
Okay, I think I don't see any other questions that have come in. Well, thank you so much, AJ Sacasio and Ab Quinlivan, for presenting today. And thank you to our sponsors today, Power Intel and Comtrend. And thank you all for joining us and tuning in, and we'll see you next time.